I'm Julie Alexandria.
And I'm Jennifer Mercedes.
Between the two of us, we have over 2 decades of experience working in professional sports.
We're telling the stories of women who are at the top of their game in sports and business.
Welcome
to the Locker Room.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locker Room Talk. I'm Jennifer Mercedes, joined by Miss Julie Alexandria, and today's guest is Miss Joy Taylor, whom, as her bio states, has kicked down the doors of the boys club that is Sports Talk Radio, and she's never looked back. She co-hosts The Herd alongside Colin Cowherd on FS1 and Fox Sports Radio. She is also the host of Maybe I'm Crazy podcast and Thursday Night Football Scouts feed on Amazon Prime. Welcome to the Locker Room, Joy.
Thank you for having me.
We're so glad you're here. All right, let's kick it off. One of the things that really makes you stand out, in our opinion, is that you have this incredible skill set. You've worked your way through sports talk radio, which many would consider is quite a hostile environment when it comes to sports fans. You've always held your own, though. How do you think that your start in radio truly shaped who you are today in your point of view?
Well, radio definitely helped shape me as an opinionist, and it really prepared me, I think, in the best way for doing live television. Because as you guys know, when you're doing a live show, and specifically radio, you have to talk a lot, and you have to be prepared because you can't just take breaks. If you stop talking for 5 seconds, it feels like an eternity. So it allowed me to really dig into my personality and find, interesting ways and angles and opinions and really be selective with stories that I knew I had strong opinions about. And radio is it's a huge frontier I believe, for talent development leading into television. And I've gotten that feedback from a lot of people in the business that when someone knows you started in sports talk radio, they know that you put some dues in, because it's a hustle, and it requires a lot of prep and dedication if you want to do a really good show. So I love radio. That's my first love in the business, and it definitely helps prepare me for my time at FS1.
Now, one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the show is because you are one of the women that really has allowed me to feel like I can say what I want, and I can speak my mind, especially during the pandemic and everything that went on in 2020. You, Jamil, and a list of other women who are successful at what they do and at the top of their game, working for networks where sometimes you would think that you may be, there's some type of restriction on what you could say. You're out there saying what you want, and it means something, And so, first of all, thank you for doing that, because I don't know if you realize how impactful it is for a lot of us who are still climbing the ladder. But what was that moment for you where you felt like, you know what, I don't care. I don't give a F, and I'm going to say whatever I want.
I think it actually happened a long time ago. Well, not a long time ago, but well before the pandemic, and really even before I was at network. I really hadn't felt confident speaking about some more serious topics as a talent up until the Ray Rice incident happened. And that was obviously a massive story, not just in sports, but really around the world in news, because the video was so violent, and it sparked a very serious national and international conversation about domestic violence. And I am a domestic violence survivor. So I had never talked about it publicly before, and never really felt compelled to either. I'd worked with domestic violence organizations on volunteer basis, and, as an ambassador for them, but not necessarily telling my story. And I was listening to a lot of the commentary and a lot of the opinions and angles that people had on what was happening, and specifically as it related to Janae Rice, who was the victim of the violence. And I just kept thinking and feeling like there's such little education about what's actually happening here. There's not really a lot of good information, and just knowledge about what happens in these situations, and why they happen, and what actual advocacy and education can do to not prevent, because you're never going to prevent all violence, but to mitigate it and to work with survivors and abusers as well. And so I was like, I can't really just talk about this without explaining why and where I'm coming from. So I wrote a blog about what happened to me. And this was like kind of a little bit before things really went viral like that. Mm-hmm. But it got a lot of attention, and I did a lot of interviews talking about it, and spoke about it on my show. And I've spoken a lot about it since, but having that moment in that space, and I didn't need permission, obviously, to do it and talk about it on my radio show, but it was a very revealing and, I guess some would say aggressive thing to do at the time. So that really put me in a space where I felt very confident speaking about things that I cared about and things that I believed in. And that's a very, not so much now, controversial topic, but then, there were a lot of people that were not necessarily there was still a side to be had there, even with the video, you still heard people like, what did she say before that happened? And you don't know what happened before the camera came on. And, if you said that now, people will be like, come on, there's only one side to be on this. So that really put me in a position of confidence moving forward to talk about things like that. So last year, and even before that, really with Kaepernick and other domestic violence issues that have come up and other issues relating to women and, all sorts of social issues that we've discussed on Undisputed as well before my time on The Herd, I really didn't have any hesitation in talking about how I felt about what was happening. And I also think we're living in a different time now, with if we just keep it a buck. When Trump got in office, all of that changed. Everyone had an opinion about what was going on in the world, and you had to. There was no more sitting on the sidelines, or I wasn't a very political person. I still don't consider myself to be an extremely political person. I've always voted. I've always, paid attention to what was going on in my community and what, affected those around me. But, I let the politicians hypothetically do their job. But, we're not in that space anymore. Everybody's got to have a voice and an opinion. And now with the pandemic, it's even more important. So I think that's really where it started and kind of gave me the confidence to speak on those things.
And going back to the domestic violence, I just wanted to touch on one thing. When I saw another interview that you had done, and you talked about Janae and how people were attacking her, right? And saying, well, why would you why would you go back? Why would you forgive? And it's important to because maybe somebody hasn't come into contact or knows somebody who is open about their domestic violence issues, but you never say, I'm going to go into this relationship and I'm going to take the abuse, right? Like, I've been in an emotionally abusive relationship, and I'm like, before that, I'd be like, please, I'm not taking from anyone, right? And it's like, I'm not going to take that from, and then you find yourself there, and it's like this deep, dark hole that you don't even know how to get out of until you do. And then when you're like on the other side of it, it's like, oh my God, what? Like, then it's when then for me, at least, it was like when I could really see how emotionally abusive this person was to me, that I let myself, or that they put me in that. And so I just wanted you to touch on that, if you can, just how important it is to not victimize the victim.
Right. And that's generally what happens with most, let's just be honest, with most issues that come up with women when they speak up. The first default response is that she's lying, or that she's saying this to ruin his life, or she's saying this to get money. And I really don't know when that transition happens. I feel like people used to believe women, at least to some degree, but that those days are over. So yeah, I mean, the victimizing the victim thing was really what triggered me, because people used to say the same thing to me. And that's why I thought it was important to speak up, because there's a lack of education about how this happens. And this is very, very common, very common. I think it's 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 women will experience abuse or domestic abuse at some point in their lives. So this is not a thing that's exclusive to a certain demographic of people at all. Rich, poor, every race, religion, country, it doesn't matter. It happens everywhere, all over the world. And it's very, very common. So you don't have to go far to find somebody who's experienced abuse. But yeah, to your point, you wouldn't just like, someone's not going to walk up to you and be like, I plan on treating you like for the next 6 months. Get in my car. Like, no one's doing that. They present as the best thing that's ever happened to you. And also abusers are very well, not trained, but they have a keen eye and intuition to find people who have an emotionally vulnerable space for them to slip into. And that's where they get you. So yes, if you want to learn more about how abuse works, you can visit urinyc.org and speak to someone there, or contact your local domestic violence shelter, or just, you can ask too, because most people have experienced it. But yeah, that's how it works. They're going to come to you with one tactic is called love bombing, where they just treat you like the biggest princess goddess that's ever touched on planet Earth. And listen, while we are, all of us have some flaws, and it's appropriate to get to know people before you treat them that way. So that's usually a sign that that's what's happening to you. Not that nice guys are manipulating you, but if someone doesn't know you at all and they're going to that extreme, and then they'll slowly start trying to pick away at your self-esteem while also speaking of you in these extreme ways. That's generally how they present. Is they're not going to come to you and tell you that they're going to, hurt you. They're going to come and tell you that it's the best thing that's ever happened to you. And that's how it happens. And when you're talking about domestic issues where you have, marriages and children and finances and homes and families and years, like, it's not as simple as, oh, just leave. Like, we'd love it to be that way, but that's just not how it works. And it usually, when it reaches a violent point, there has been a significant buildup of emotional abuse or financial abuse or psychological abuse that has led and conditioned this person to then be accepting of physical abuse. And then it just goes on and accelerates from there and builds from there. So yeah, that's why I felt the need to talk about it, because I felt like there was really just a lack of information out there about, how abuse really works.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for doing so. And thank you for that shout out and giving that information. I want to ask you about something that you mentioned earlier about everyone having this ability on social media to voice their strongly worded opinions. So as a woman in this industry, we are subject to all sorts of scrutiny, from what we're wearing, how we dress, how we look, how much we weigh, how we do our hair. It's just kind of always come with the territory. But now with social media, anyone and everyone has a platform to have their opinions heard. So you personally do an incredible job of handling the trolls. So at what point, what was the turning point? What was that moment when you decided that it is okay to check these people?
Well, I think I've always kind of felt that way. But I also, weirdly, because of radio, have kind of a background in trolls before Twitter really popped off the way that it has, and trolls really became a common household thing. We used to have the text line. I'm sure you guys have heard of the radio text line. Text into the show, sponsored by Pizza Hut or whatever. And so our program director would want us to read text during the show. And this text line is just streams of, like, mostly, I don't even know. Can I curse on here? I already did, but
you're good.
Okay. it's like streams of just bull and just like, it's really anonymous. It's way more anonymous than Twitter, because it's just a cell phone number. And you're never going to call or respond to this person. So they just say whatever they want. And it's just filth. Like, every 25th text is like something of value that you could actually use on the show in some way. So we'd have to get it in. So you got to read through all this rubbish to get to one that you can actually say on the show. So I was kind of already used to, unsolicited garbage feedback. And in some ways, that's a small part of giving your opinion on sports, and specifically being in sports radio. It comes with the territory, because sports fans are fanatics. There's nothing about, being a sports fan that's rational. Like, we're going to get emotional and scream at a TV thinking that we are affecting, or we're going to the game, or sit on the other side of the couch to change the mojo. Like, we're insane people, crazy people. So there is some of that I think I've just either gotten used to, or I feel at this point is just a part of the job. Is dealing with a certain level of irrational behavior. But obviously there is a point where it passes over into disrespectful and unnecessary and, complete bull. And that's what the trolls are. So I had a little bit of a callous towards hearing and reading that. But now, it's kind of like a sport. I think they think that it affects my life. And I think for some people it does. And that's like, so I don't want to make light of it, because everybody handles it differently. Not that I'm like some big tough guy, but I don't care. I don't care. So it's in some ways, I guess, easier for me to handle, because if I get stuff all the time on social media that's not even necessarily trolls. It's just because I have an opinion that's going in the face of what everyone else is saying. And people will come for me for 2 days straight. And I'm not reading it. So argue amongst yourselves. I have stuff to do, and that's what my opinion is. And I feel like I'm right. And, maybe you disagree, and that's fine, but it is what it is. So I can get into a spirited conversation, but it's very, very difficult to have nuanced conversations on social media. And I am a nuanced person. I believe in the meat of the conversation. And that's why I like to do long form content, because I there's more to it than just this and that. And I think perspectives and where you come from and what your experiences are and how you see the world can often affect what your opinion is, right? Like that's a fact. So if your opinion is this because you came from here and you experienced this, and mine is over here, then maybe neither one of us is wrong or right. It's just our opinion, and we don't necessarily have to move each other off of that. But trolls don't participate in that. It's just mean, and sometimes it's disrespectful, and sometimes it's very scary too. I mean, there's people get death threats and rape threats and horrible stuff on social media all the time. So my mentality is this: if I wouldn't ask for your advice, I don't care about your criticism. And if you can look at social media in that way, because there are certain people who might respond to you on social media that you actually respect, or you actually, wonder about their opinion, or have had conversations with them before. And in that situation, I think it's fair to have some self-awareness. Like, maybe I am wrong about this, or maybe I should look at it this way. But you're not going to go to some troll, John Z2587, and be like, what do you think about my hair today? So why do you care what he thinks about your hair today? Like, he is not relevant in any space and time anywhere on this planet, which is why he has an account to troll you, or she, who knows? They're trolls, so we don't know who they are. But like, this is an anonymous nobody, and you have to think, like, put yourself in the body of someone who has the time to do that. That ain't me. I don't have time for that. So I think when you keep a perspective on who these people are, what's the purpose of what they're saying is, and what are you trying to accomplish with it, then I think it helps your, mental state in seeing and reading that. And it also might just help you not to read it at all, which is hard, because we want to interact with people. We want to have conversations. We want to communicate with other people. So sometimes you just have to see it. But as far as teeing them up, I mean, that's light work. They're idiots. So most of them can't even spell. So I don't even usually have to do anything except for explain that they don't know the difference between your and you are.
And usually that's the best part, right? When you can just like look at the grammar, like, okay, this person really, really does not matter. No. And it's quite entertaining too. Like I have to admit, when I see you like check some of these people, it's like, yeah, thank you. Cause it's good to see, and it's funny and whatever, but whatever. Trolls are trolls. But speaking about hair, you brought up hair. Let's talk hair and the hair revolution. I've seen you try out a number of different hairstyles, from short and sweet to long and luscious, the braids. Have you ever gotten any pushback on the styles that you've chosen? And not so much from the fans, but from networks, executives, and I say this because we had MJ Acosta on from NFL Network, and she talked about her hair journey and going natural. And in the beginning of her career, she had received pushback, and she also felt like she had to wear it a certain way because that was the norm. Did you ever get any of that?
Oh yeah. I mean, MJ is the reason. MJ and I are very close friends. We went to college together. So MJ is the reason that I started doing my hair natural again, because when I came to Fox, it was, I wasn't styling it 5 days a week. So, even though it wasn't, I would straighten it, here and there, it wasn't damaged because I didn't have to do it every single day, which is obviously a blessing, but it also damages your hair. So, yes, I definitely have had some traumatic incidents with my hair and what I'm supposed to wear and how, and feeling pressure to wear it a certain way, and, not being given the tools to style my type of hair. I mean, anything that you can imagine. Yes. And that is a result, one, of not having a diverse workplace and diverse talent. So when you've never had to deal with someone who has a different kind of hair, which most people have different type of hair. It's not a crazy concept, but if you only hire the same kind of person and you only hire the same kind of people to work on that same kind of person, then you're probably going to run into this situation. And I think in many ways we have sort of forced networks and just the business in general. And there's been a larger conversation, obviously, outside of just our business, certainly a huge deal in Hollywood with makeup and hair, about how, those things need to be provided. And not because you need special treatment. It's just what it is. People are different. People have different kinds of hair. People have different colored skin. That's what it is. So yes, I've definitely experienced that. Now I'm just of the mentality that, I mean, who gonna stop me? It's my hair. It just goes out of my head. It goes out of my head. If I want to wear it straight, I'll wear it straight. If I want to wear it curly, I wear it curly. That's just what it is. If I want to cut it all off, then I'll cut it all off. Guys do whatever all the time. Nobody says anything. They shave their face. They grow their beard out. They have mustaches. They have crazy eyebrows. They go bald. Nobody tells them to go put a toupee on. So I think things were just accepted for a long time because there was, power creates these dynamics, right? We know that. And a lack of diversity. And so eventually that goes away. So here we are now. And I don't think I don't look at it so much as being defiant. It's just like, what do you want me to do? This is how my hair grows out of my head. And I'm not going to go bald for you. So I'm not when my hair is breaking off in chunks because I'm straightening it 5 days a week and putting all this heat on it, which is not normal. That's just that's what's going to happen. So yeah, I think I get a lot of pushback, obviously, from trolls or whatever, things like that. But in general, it's not so much of a statement as so much as it's this is what my hair does. So.
Oh, I love that you and MJ are really good friends. We loved MJ. MJ was my friend in my head until we had her on the show, and she was like, "Oh my God, I love MJ."
She's the best.
Yeah, she's awesome, and that's such a great story as far as she's the one that inspired you to do that. I mean, the trolls, the pushback, we've gotten, like you said, we're living in different times, and we've gotten to a point where it's okay for women, especially women in sports, to be cute and also know their right? I think for a long time you had to look a certain way and, cover up and just, or be either super exposed, right, and super sexualized. It was never this in between and just normal people, how we want to look, right? And so, yes, the times are changing, thank God, because you know what? If I want to wear my hoop earrings, I'm going to wear my hoop earrings. And if you want to wear your hair in braids, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's also a result of having more women in those spaces. When you have a certain role for women, or you have a certain type of woman that you're hiring, or to your point, the other extreme, and that's all that's available, then yeah, it's going to appear weird when you see just a normal person that sometimes wants to wear a V-neck and then sometimes wants to wear a, high colored shirt, because that's what, like, and then I'm wearing a hoodie. Like, that's just, so a normal person that dresses different on different days, great, awesome. Like, there's room for everybody. And I think the breaking molds and these ideas of what you're supposed to be in certain spaces and what you're supposed to look like in certain spaces is important, and normalizing that for people and emphasizing that this is normal, this is okay. I'm a woman, and sometimes I want to wear this dress, and then sometimes I don't want to wear that dress. And it doesn't matter, because that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for what I'm saying into the microphone, and everything else is just whatever your preference of aesthetic is not my problem. So that's kind of what I think it comes down to, is the more women that are in the space, then the less of a thing it is, which is why I believe that the more women in the space is a better thing for women. There's this idea in the business that, like, women are all in competition for the same job, and in some ways, not due to any of our doing. In some places, that is the case, which is what needs to change, because the more women that are in all of the jobs, then the less it's like, oh, this woman got this job, and then it's just like, you just got this job as a person who's qualified for that job. So all of those things play a role in, like, hold hands with the next issue of progress. So it seems like a small thing to someone who doesn't understand what we're talking about, but all of this matters, because all of this plays a role in advancement and progress.
Absolutely. And that's actually a perfect segue to my next question, because it is about women in this industry and the opportunities, and sometimes the very few opportunities. Because sometimes when you have a female as a sideline reporter to the higher ups, that checks a box as diversity for the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there's only one role, because you have the traditional, color and play-by-play, and then it's like, okay, let's throw a female in there. I mean, on this show, we love to give women their flowers, and we like to promote that sense of solidarity, but it becomes so difficult when the opportunities are so few, that when it's like, okay, this network or this broadcast or this radio show is looking for just one female co-host or just one female reporter or, correspondent, the business can kind of pit us against each other because of just the sheer fact that the opportunities are just so few for women. So how have you navigated those waters, and what advice would you give to women in this industry that are trying to make it when those opportunities are so few and far between?
How I've navigated is a really good group chat, wine, a great therapist. And you know what, just also being very open about what I'm experiencing with my male colleagues, because I think that helps them to understand the different challenges that I face compared to the challenges that they face. And that I think can help kind of, open eyes to what everything that you're talking about, because what you're saying is true. There is this idea that women are only appropriate in sports spaces in certain roles, as a moderator, as a reporter, as a beat reporter, sidelines, feature interviews, which are all obviously amazing jobs, and legends have done them and done it to the highest level. But there's also analyst jobs. There's also play-by-play jobs. There's also desk jobs on opinion shows. There's all kinds of other positions, radio shows, podcasts. There's all of these other outlets where the default is men. And then it's like, you know what? The show needs a woman to ask us what we think. And that's to an executive brilliant, because it's like, yeah, we're so progressive. We put a woman on this show. Look at us. And while that's great, because those opportunities do help get women paid more and help highlight women in those spaces and provide jobs for women. If you keep only doing that, then you're pigeonholing women into only being able to do that. And then that becomes what they're capable of to the next employer and in the business. And then it's like this idea that she actually has something to say is like, what could you possibly think about this? I thought you were just here to read this script and, you know, put a couple smiles on some faces. Like, I was told by a producer once, he was like, you need more, I just need more from you. I just think like cheerleader. I was like, boy, I ain't never been a cheerleader in my life. So I don't know. Have you been a cheerleader? Maybe you can show me what the vibe is that you're looking for. Cause I'm not a cheerleader. I love cheerleaders, obviously, but I personally did not cheer in high school. Believe it or not. That was just a Halloween costume for me. So yeah, I mean, it's a huge problem in the business. I believe it is, because that is what you have to overcome if you want to get into a different space. And that's idea that, like, it's not even, the thought doesn't even come to someone's mind. Like, oh, this position's open. I know the perfect guy for this job. Mm-hmm. So it's like a woman doesn't even come to mind. And it's in some ways it's a pipeline thing, right? Like, I came from radio. So I came from a space, but I strategically also went into radio because I wanted to be a personality. I wanted to give my opinion. And I didn't really ever want to be a reporter. And it doesn't matter for men, because men go from being reporters to analysts and opinionists all the time. So it doesn't matter for men. There's no one way to get to any of these positions, but I just wanted to do radio. But there has to be a progression of, okay, are you now a writer? Like, where do you get into the space where you can break through, where you get that opportunity to show what you have to say and what you can do, and doing live television and doing, live opinions or hosting a show or any of those things. So yes, that is why sometimes I'll hear from men like, oh, like, I don't know why you guys are so supportive of each other. Like, it's a very competitive business. I'm like, yeah, but we still need more of us in the business. So it doesn't help to tear each other down. And, despite what, I don't know, the stereotype of women that we all hate each other, like, we actually don't. We vibe much more than y'all do. If we don't get along with somebody, it's actually literally personal, for the most part. Other than that, we're like, yeah, girl, I like that hair. That's cute.
Yep, exactly. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I've told one of the reporters or just, female personalities that I've seen come across, be like, oh my God, I love your hair, or whatever, right? Like, because yes, we are supportive of each other for the most part, I think. And
we all are dealing with the same struggles, right? We're all dealing with the same things. And then in some ways, some of us are dealing with more, but we can all relate to that. Like, everyone in the business can relate to the same thing, like breaking in. Okay, you can't get hired if you don't have experience. You can't get experience if you don't get hired. Like, there's certain things that men and women in this business, we understand because we're in the business. But with women, it's just something else. And we all are dealing with that something else, patriarchy. And we all have the same thing in common when it comes to that. So I think it's, for the most part, and obviously nothing is everything or all, but for the most part, I've had amazing experiences with women in this business.
I mean, it's a lot like, for instance, when I moved to Chicago 2 years ago, for the first time in my life, I was the only one of my skin color in a lot of the spaces because Chicago is just so segregated. And I never realized, I never knew that. And so whenever I saw somebody who kind of looked like me, was maybe a little dark, I'm like, oh, are they Latina? Are they Black? Like, what are they? And you felt like you feel seen and then you're like, oh my God, let's go be friends. And it's the same thing when you see just another woman in the space where just men. It's the same type of like emotional reaction that we have because there's somebody that looks like me. And like you said, we're all going through the same thing.
Absolutely. And this isn't like a man bashing thing.
No.
This is a certain man bashing thing. Like not all of you are exempt, but it's not about like us versus men. It's the patriarchy. Like it's a system that is designed not just to keep women down, not just to keep women of color down, just to keep minorities down and just keep things status quo for the way that they've always been. And it takes people knocking stuff over to get that to stop. And so that's all there is to it. It's not about like, I love men. Cause I hate when guys are like, like, it's not about that. Okay. First of all, if you're offended, like you're probably part of the problem, but it's not about that. Like some stuff is just for girls. Sorry.
Exactly. Some stuff is just for girls.
I mean, this is what we're going through. We're explaining this. So like we are explaining what we're dealing with. And it can change. And I would love for it to change. I would love for us to not have this conversation anymore, but we're not there yet.
No, we're not. But Joy, this has been a blast, but we're going to get into some rapid fire questions real quick before we let you go. And I'll start it off with Tupac or Biggie?
Tupac.
Shake Shack or Chick-fil-A?
Shake Shack.
Pittsburgh's North Shore or Miami South Beach?
Pittsburgh always thinks I'm banging on Pittsburgh. I would actually say south side of Pittsburgh, I've had more party nights on than North Shore. North Shore only became a destination recently. So I got to go Miami South Beach, but I do love Pittsburgh still, so don't be mad at me.
What makes you crazy in this world?
What makes me crazy? Dumb people talking about stuff they don't know about. It's my number one pet peeve in life, and it's accelerated over the last couple of years. And it's not even just like people who are dumb, like even people that I respect who are just being willfully ignorant about something is very, very frustrating. I don't know a lot. In fact, in the grand scheme of life, I know very, very little about anything. And I consider that to be very normal. But my awareness of my lack of knowledge is apparently not normal because everybody knows everything about anything now. And you absolutely don't. I am not an expert in veterinary work. I don't know what's wrong with this cat. I'm going to take it to a veterinarian because that's what they do. If this plumbing is leaking, I'm not going to like try and fix it myself. I'm going to call a plumber, electrician, I don't know, a doctor, epidemiologist, perhaps. It's just a woman about their body. Like, I just don't understand when it became cute to be loud and dumb. And so many people are that. And there's this idea that there's some shame in admitting that you're wrong, or admitting that you got it wrong, or admitting that you changed your mind on something because you got new information. It's like fascinating. Like, oh, well, last month they said it was this. Like, yeah, that's how science works. It's called an experiment. It's called a theory, a hypothesis. Obviously, you were not paying attention in 7th grade, which explains a lot. I'm not a scientist, but I do know how science works. How about if you tear your ACL and you go to the hospital to get a surgery done, and the doctor says to you, would you like us to do the surgery that they did in the 1970s where they cut your entire leg open and stapled it from your thigh to your ankle? Or would you like us to use this laser beam? Oh, you want the 70s one because they changed their mind from the 70s to 2021? It's just mind-numbing how stupid people are. And it's not, I mean that as an insult in the kindest way, because you don't have to be stupid. You can learn new things. You can educate yourself. You can talk to people. You can read books. You can listen to actual experts who have earned degrees and done studies amongst their other brilliant peers to educate yourself. And then you can just ask a question of somebody who knows more than you. And it's honestly, nothing drives me crazier. I have to consciously remove myself from situations when people do this. And I've lost some friends over the past year specifically because of it, because it's just changed my opinion on a lot of people. I'm like, man, I know you're not that smart. And you're talking to me like you are smart. And I know you're not smart. So I'm just confused as to why you think that you know about this. And it's not about I'm better than you. I don't know anything either. The difference is I'm not running around talking to people like I do. I have enough self-awareness to know this. And now I'm going to butcher this. It's total nonsense. I know nothing. And a sign of intelligence, true intelligence, is the acute awareness that you know so little, and to continue to better yourself, and to continue to educate yourself, and continue to better yourself in your field, and try new things and meet new people and have new experiences. And nobody says you have to be out here in these streets, but if you're going to be running your mouth, please, at the bare minimum, do something more than read a meme as your source of information, because you are reading a internet sticker. Like, I'm supposed to be impressed by that. Sorry for the soapbox.
No, you just spoke for all of us, and
it drives me crazy.
Oh, it drives just all of us crazy. The lack of common sense that has just developed in this lack of common sense and lack of empathy to things that, yes, drive us up the wall. And finally, final question: who will you start, bench, and cut? Skip Bayless, Shannon Sharp, Colin Cowherd.
Well, I'm not gonna cut anybody. I guess I benched Skip and Shannon to go to the herd with Colin. So Colin's my starter right now. But no, I loved working with Skip and Shannon. Skip actually was our not our 5-year anniversary of the start of Undisputed. I think Monday. What day is today? Yeah, Monday. So it's crazy. 5 years ago was the first day of Undisputed. And I remember it like it was yesterday because I was so nervous. And there was like a lot going on behind the scenes and I was completely frazzled. And I look at the pictures now and I'm like, oh my God, what a dork. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. Like, if I could just go back in a time machine, like, girl, just wait till you get to 2021. But yeah, they were great. It was a great experience working with the two of them, launching that show. It was a lot of pressure, obviously, Skip coming to a new network, so it was all eyes on him. And we traveled a lot, went to New York for the McGregor fight, to the US Open, to the Super Bowl in Houston, and NBA Finals in Cleveland and Oakland, and McGregor Mayweather. And it was a great experience being able to do that show and do all those live events, and launch what is still an awesome show, Rocking with Jenny and Skip and Shannon now. So so I love them both, Unc and Skip and Jenny, and it's awesome working with Colin. Colin is great. We did the show a lot before I came on because I would fill in for Christine. So we had a pretty seamless transition when I came over, but we've definitely grown a lot over the past couple of years, and especially having to do the show away from each other for a couple months on Zoom really worked out a whole different rhythm for us. So it's been great. I'm really excited for the football season, and yeah, Colin's great.
Awesome. Well, we're excited for what the future holds for you. I'm going to say it right now because of our prior conversation a second ago about hosts and co-hosts and all of that. I'm going to say this, Joy. I think at some point, hopefully, we can evolve to a place where you will have your show and you can have a little male co-host chime in and hit the little beats with laughter and his reaction.
I love that.
You can tell him to be quiet and read the traffic report.
Well, Colin doesn't tell me to be quiet.
But you can. No, I'm kidding. No, I know.
Colin's been amazing. Colin's actually, we had a conversation when I first came on the show about how he wanted to expand the role from what it was when I first came on. So Colin's been incredible for me. And also just getting to learn from him and how he prepares and what he does to make the show great has really helped me as a talent too, because it's, we do a 3-hour show, which is very long, especially for television. And, he's one of the few people on earth that can do it at the level that he does it. So he's been great, but I'll keep that in mind in the future, though. That's not a terrible idea.
I'm just saying. Well, thank you so much for being a part of our show. Thank you for your time and your energy here on The Locker Room. We appreciate it so much. Thank you, Joy Taylor, for joining us here on The Locker Room. For Jennifer Mercedes, I'm Julie Alexandria, and thank you so much for listening.
It could have been a situation where we didn't really have that immersion in the language, and I could have been a baseball writer who doesn't really know Spanish all that well. And I'm so grateful to be able to be in this career where it's so beneficial.